Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's installment of StockCharts TV, Mish's Market Minute. I am your host, Mish. And since we are now really in the thick of earnings season, I thought we would continue with that theme. Last week, we covered a whole bunch of stuff that reported, and pretty much Netflix continued to move up out of the base. We had covered that, plus a few others that didn't work out, like, for example, IBM. So this week, we have a couple that already reported we're going to cover. But really, we're going to look at the thick of it that happens on October 26th and 27th. And we're going to stop it there since I'll do this again with you next week. Hopefully you had a chance to look at the video I did on Final Bar with David Keller. We covered the macro. And meanwhile, let's get started. Okay, so with that, here is the very ambitious list of symbols that we're going to cover today. So let's go right ahead to the charts. Okay, well, let's start with American Express. And the reason why I find this one so fascinating is this actually reports probably after you've heard this video, which is going to be on Friday, October 22nd. And you can see that as of Wednesday, October 20th, this actually went on to make a new all-time high. And so really, we're looking at that 180 level as the point to clear. Now, this is the kind of situation where we have certainly the leadership in that it's still outperforming the SPY. And in the momentum, we got into a little bit of resistance here, along with a resistance on the Bollinger Band. So there's two things you want to look at for American Express. Since it's in the financial sector, I'm going to anticipate that it's going to do well, in which case, if it gaps up over 180, now you can do it as sort of a momentum gap trade, looking for another move up and in uncharted territory. Of course, that's hard to say. So it'll be all about your risk. On the flip side, if this does disappoint in any way, shape, or form, considering we're at the top of the Bollinger Band in price and the top of the Bollinger Band in real motion down here, as you can see, then it's possible that the move is done and we could see a little bit of a sell-off, maybe closer to around 167. At this point, if somebody had to shoot the dice here, I would guess more on the gap higher. So keep your eyes on that one. The next one actually did report this week, and I believe I may have covered it this last week, but if I didn't, I want to look at it now because earnings is out of the way. This is Intuitive Surgical. And I've been extremely interested in some of the healthcare stocks, or I should say the pharma stocks. This one has been around for a very, very, very long time, healthcare medical equipment. And so if we just take a look at what happened since it reported, it actually started out lower and then came back. And now you can see we're getting a little bit of follow through today. But the resistance is extremely clear, and that really would be at around 345. So we have a leadership situation where it's outperforming the SPY. The momentum hasn't been all that great. It had really come down tremendously in momentum. And so that's a little bit of a concern, but nonetheless, at least it cleared back over the Bollinger Band here and back over the 200-day moving average. But nonetheless, if this can clear 345, I would look to be a buyer, and most likely I would use a pretty tight risk, maybe even under the low that we have so far in the day I'm speaking to you, or at around 337. So about an $8 risk. Again, when you're talking about a $340 stock, that's really very low. To see if this can actually go up to about 365 and maybe even make new highs. So this one is very high on my list. Okay, the next one that reports is CLF. Now, Cleveland Cliffs, we had FCX Freeport McMoran report coming into today that I'm talking to you, and actually that did not do so well. And in fact, all the commodities right now, particularly the metals, the industrial metals commodities, are taking a pause, mainly because of what happened in China with Evergrande. In China, all of these iron ore, steel, copper went limit down, and I believe that had a lot to do with a liquidity crisis. But right now, this is going to report this week. So what we want here right now is for this to hold 1980, number one, and to clear the 50-day moving average 2234. Now, since I think this is going to report actually also on Friday, it probably behooves to wait till Monday to see if you can continue to hold above the 50 if it gets there, and then maybe over 23 would be more like the signal. Now, again, if it turns out not to be a good report, and of course we could see the momentum is not great and it has no leadership here, and it does break down, then I would be looking to see what happens under 1980 to around 1875 before looking to get involved. The next one is 3M. And this is an industrial stock. Now, what's interesting, this is all now going into what reports next week. What's interesting about 3M is that you did have not really a clean mean reversion here until this day. It had done it in price, but not momentum. So once we got here, we started to see a little bit of follow through. And of course, it's coming down today. However, and we had a death cross, by the way. So this is in a bearish phase. So this actually, believe it or not, could be an interesting situation, particularly if the market can't hold up for any reason, to look at this from the short side of the trade. And what would make me go short in this one would probably be either a breakdown under 179, or even more likely to follow through would be a breakdown under the low of 174, 173.78. And you might be able to see a $10 to $13 move down to around 160 with this particular company. On the other side, if the earnings surprise, really, I would not be touching this stock until we get back over at least 189, 190. And then we can look at this whole thing as a base. The next one, of course, is the biggie, Alphabet. And these big growth stocks, they've done very, very well. You can see it's still slightly outperforming, but look at your momentum indicator here. You're actually under the Bollinger Band. And so the momentum is going down while the price here is sitting and holding the 50. So this could be another interesting situation here. Unless this really clears above the highs, I would almost think that this too could be an interesting short situation potentially. And yet I wouldn't do anything just based on momentum. We'd have to actually see the confirmation in price, which means that after earnings, this would have to break down under 27.95, which is the 50-day moving average. I'd give it even a little bit more room here, maybe under 27.20 kind of thing. And then it's possible that this has been on a truck all the way up for so long with just some gentle corrections that maybe we would see a better correction, maybe even one back down to around 2,500. So like I said, unless this really clears above the high here at 29.25, I would be more interested in this based on the momentum as a short potential or buying puts. But again, wait till earnings. Now we've had the airlines all report, and the airlines for the most part have shown profit, but yet they're still not doing very well. Partly, of course, has to do with the fact that the oil prices have gone up, even though they've relaxed a little bit as I'm speaking to you. And partly because the demand, although it's come back, is still not anywhere near where we were pre-COVID. So in this case, JetBlue, which did have a good mean reversion trade here. See how it crossed the Bollinger Band and came back through it, and the same thing here with Real Motion. Now where we're at is we had a mean reversion to the other side. So we're smack dab in the middle, looking like we're about to fail. Again, if we fail these levels, I don't know if I would necessarily want to short a $14 stock, but I would certainly look at it as information. And then on the flip side, if for some reason this comes in well and it does surprise, I would say probably would want to be a little bit safer and look at a move over 16 to show that maybe it has some signs of strength, or at least look for the Bollinger Band to hold here in terms of the dots, clear the 50, while at the same time we may be having a second mean reversion here, at least in price. So either way, this is going to be interesting only if it surprises to the upside. Now, AMD, of course, Advanced Micro Devices, has been another huge stock, and we just had a major run to the upside. So once again, this has to either clear these all-time highs and keep going, or wind up disappointing. Now, in this case, the only way that it would look kind of more interesting is, again, if we had a mean reversion trade. So let's take a look at the real momentum. Right now, it's above the Bollinger Band, even though price is under. So if we came in lower and the momentum crossed down below the Bollinger Band, it's possible against these highs, you might have a more active trade to the short side. Now, Boyd Gaming I included because this is a Chinese EV company. It's one that Warren Buffett holds. I talked about it on Fox Business this week. And you can see it's like on par really here. Oh no, excuse me, let me fix this. Let me fix this real quick because it's saying leadership is gold and it should be SPY. Okay, here we go. So it's underperforming the SPY. The real momentum indicator here is on the 50-day moving average. And by the way, all the stocks that I just showed you, AXP, ISRG, CELF, MMM, and Google, that was all against the wrong leadership. I'm not going to go back and fix it, but just know that we should be looking at the momentum and the price as opposed to the leadership. And now from here on in, we can look at all three more reliably. So I apologize for that. But anyway, it is underperforming the SPY. It is above the middle Bollinger Band, obviously in a bullish phase. And if in this case, after it's been really sort of basing out, if this clears 70, I would consider that to be, especially if we start to see leadership and the Bollinger Bands clear here on the momentum, I could see where this could be a good buy as well. So keep your eye on Boyd Gaming after it reports. Next one is a little stock, but it actually performs kind of well. It's thin. It's called CommVault. And CommVault is a tech stock, software tech stock. And you can see this one is showing no leadership, actually underperforming, and the momentum is not great. However, we are under the 50-day moving average, and that could flip. So if the earnings turn out to be good on this one, I would say probably over 78.50 would be an interesting place to look at. But on the flip side, if this breaks down under the 200-day moving average, not only would that be weak for this particular stock, but it would also make you wonder about some of these tech software companies, if they've been so undervalued and they're actually ready to go down, like what I showed you potentially with Google or even AMD. Now, the next one is a shipping company. Since we're looking at transportation, has been strong. This is Robinson, CH Robinson Trucking Company. Look at that overperformance. Look at the momentum going ballistic. I hadn't looked at this stock really actually until now. So again, with this reporting, we want to look at 100. It gets through 100. That continues to look pretty strong. On the other hand, if it comes in strong but doesn't quite make a move up, I'd probably say around 95 you should start to see some really good support. And if it comes in much lower, you don't want to see it break 90. But again, either a dip to 95 or a move over 100, and this stock still looks very good as well, especially seasonally as we're coming into the holiday season. Now, since I wanted to kind of go through a couple of sectors here, this is Digital Realty Trust. So this is a REIT. Now, REITs have been doing a little bit worse because of the fact that the rates have gone up, of course. But on the flip side, this has come back through the 200 and now is testing the 50-day moving average. It's started to outperform again, and the momentum has improved. So this to me looks pretty clean. If Digital Realty has two closes above the 50-day moving average, then you can use the low of whatever day it does actually clear from. Figure around 155 would have to clear, and then you could actually, this could be an indication, by the way, that the rates will get softer again. You just don't know. Right now, the 10-year rates and the 5-year rates are gotten pretty firm. But meanwhile, the long bond rates are actually coming down a little teeny bit here because of the little bit of the stress in the market. So that's another one to keep your eye on over that 155. Hasbro is yet another one. So this is toys. Very interesting to look at. Many consumers have said that they're going to come back on their Christmas shopping, but generally that people buy things for their pets and for their kids. So I'm interested to see what happens here. We just got into a death cross situation where the 50 is crossing below the 200. You could see it underperforming, yet it's holding the Bollinger Band here. So again, if this turns out to be a good earnings report or bounces after the earnings report, what you really want to look at this is over 95, figure 95.20, and then see where it goes from there. Otherwise, I wouldn't necessarily be looking to short this particular stock, but I would leave it alone. And again, look at it information that maybe the consumer discretionary, which has run very hot, is also ready to cool off. And maybe we go more, say, into the consumer staples, which we have talked about before. Now, this is an oil company, National Oilwell Varco. And of course, this has gone up with oil, but not nearly as strong as oil. And you could see it's been overperforming the SPY, but getting close here, and momentum is going down, but still holding. So this would be another one to keep an eye on, like Valero reported, by the way, and that did very, very well. So if this can get through, let's say, this 1570 level, I think that would be a good, interesting sign to take a look at. Maybe we can get back up to 1750 or even higher. Obviously, if this does not report well and breaks down under the 50 and under all of this, I wouldn't touch it, and I certainly wouldn't go short. Okay, the next one is Visa. Now, this is one I'm really interested in. I do have a theory about this being gift cards giving this year. You can see the momentum has definitely come off and it's underperforming, but at the same time, I really like this base. It had a mean reversion that I didn't want to touch so close to earnings. So at this point now, I think it's pretty clean. Over 234, 235, you can get into this one and see what happens as we head into the end of October, November, and closer to December, at least past the Black Friday type situation. So this is another one high on my list. Now, Twitter is interesting. Twitter will probably report well. However, there was a big announcement today that could cut into Twitter, and that's why we're seeing it down. And that is that Donald Trump is actually it went out as a SPAC and traded up to $15, but a media company, very obviously slanted towards Trump's feelings and policies, and it'll be interesting to see whether it catches fire or not. But nonetheless, it could take a lot of people away from Twitter. And so right now we've had a mean reversion trade where it broke down under the price here. But when this reports, really, I would say 70 would be the level to clear. And on the flip side, if this breaks down under 63, then you might also have a situation where you can start looking at a potential short trade. Okay, the next one after that is UPS. Obviously, also very much of interest as we're getting into the holiday season. Outperforming, momentum improving, sitting right at the Bollinger Band. Unfortunately, it would be hard to buy this ahead of earnings, but keep 200 in your mind, especially as it's related to the IYT, which is doing very well and still outperforming the SPY well. So over 200, you might want to take a shot on this one. And if it comes in relatively muted, but not weak, if it gets closer to the 190 as well. This is not the one that I would be looking to short at this particular time. Next one is a biotech. Aluminum, I'm sorry. Now, again, with all the commodities coming off today, steel, copper, etc., what you have right here now is this coming off as well. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens, not only with the commodity space, but you could see it's underperforming and the momentum's going down. But if this does bring in some selling after earnings, yet it holds around 1340, that could be a low risk buy. And of course, if it winds up surprising, it has to get through 18. And then that would be another interesting buy. Now, of course, we have to cover Apple. Apple is also now back over the 50-day moving average, considering all the bad stuff going on with shortages and supply chain and lawsuits and everything else that's gone on. Apple continues to hold up pretty well. But for how long? So to me, right now, momentum isn't clearing. The Bollinger Band in terms of leadership is coming down, although still outperforming. So this would be a situation where if Apple cannot clear back over 150, and winds up breaking down under, let's say, this low right here, 146.50, this would actually maybe be a potential short situation, kind of like what I'm saying about the big tech. So you're starting to see a theme here, is that if the rotation is going to continue more into small caps and more into transportation and maybe some of the newer tech, it could roll out a little bit in some of this big tech, especially if their earnings don't really come out as strong as we would think. Now, Ford is already really, really up there. So again, I don't know how much more it can go up, but nonetheless, right now we've already cleared 1650. We made a new high a little bit just today, not a new all-time high, but a new high from multi-year high. And so if this is the case here, that this is going to continue, it's still a relatively cheap stock. So keep an eye around 15 on a dip, and for this to clear, let's say above all these highs, really, let's call it 1675. Right, a few more left. I always like to look at Harley Davidson. That's been in a steady downtrend since it flipped up here, and you could see right now no leadership, momentum declining. This would be another one that if it had some kind of a mean reversion trade, in other words, if it broke down under the Bollinger Band like it did here, then priced back above at the same time that it did in the momentum, that could be interesting after earnings. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't touch this. On the flip side, if we don't have a mean reversion trade and we do move up, I would say a move over 39, maybe even waiting to 40.83, and then perhaps this thing has some legs to get back up near the highs. A couple more left, eBay being another one. I thought eBay could actually maybe do well around the holidays because you know what you're getting, you see the product and then it gets delivered to you. So you wouldn't be something that you necessarily would get caught up in a supply chain situation. But nonetheless, this also looks like a really good, strong chart, something to keep your eye on, like to see momentum clear the 50 here. And then again, might as well wait for these to do momentum trades like with Netflix through 77.50. This looks good. A trip down to 74 and a hold also looks good. Now, this is Suncor. This is another oil energy company that's been coming off a little bit with oil and energy, but getting into some support here, slightly underperforming, come off in momentum. But again, if this can hold somewhere around 22 and take out 24.50, then this could also be another interesting play. Then I went with Fiserv. Obviously, there are hundreds of stocks reporting next week, so I just took what I thought was interesting. This had a typical mean reversion trade, but again, that doesn't do us very much good right before earnings. So with that trade, though, if we see a little bit of leadership come back and a little bit more momentum push over the 50, especially if it's a diversion where the momentum gets over the 50 before price, if the price clears the 50, that could also be an interesting trade. Now, this is not going to be as interesting, let's say, and since we're in tech software and we already looked at CommVault, these are two smaller tech stocks that could actually play some catch up. So I would keep an eye on those as well. Upwork is a stock we've been in. We already have taken a couple of profit targets on this. Really like this. This is, AI cloud-based stuff. And you could see here that 60 would be a good place for this to clear. If it clears 60, then it's a very good chance this is going to go up to new highs. And finally, one I had also talked about on Fox several weeks ago, which was Spotify. I talked about it when it was trading down here. This came right into resistance right now at the 200-day moving average. You could see it showing leadership, and also it's got to clear the momentum, which is actually showing a more positive diversion. So really pretty simply, at this point now, when you have a major moving average, you get a close or two above the 200, and Spotify can continue to go up 300, maybe even up to 350. Okay, that's it for now. You all, thanks so much for watching. Y'all have a great weekend. I'll be back with you again next week. Take care. Bye for now.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.